You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
So the Super Rugby quarterfinals are locked in, and we have the confirmed schedule of games now as well. That's been released in the last couple of hours. So Friday night in Hamilton, Chiefs v Reds. That's a 7:05 kickoff. On Saturday in Wellington, 4:35, the Hurricanes play the Rebels. And then at 7:05 on Saturday at Eden Park, it'll be the Blues against the Drua. And then later on that night, the Brumbies take on the Highlanders in Canberra. That is 9:35 New Zealand time. So a game on Friday and then 3 games back to back on Saturday. In the semis, the way it works, I'm sure you know this, but I'll just reiterate, the top-ranked quarterfinal winner will host the lowest-ranked quarterfinal winner, and the second highest-ranked quarterfinal winner will host the third highest-ranked winner. And then whoever finishes in the grand final, the top-ranked semi-final winner is going to host the other semi-final winner in the grand final. So the Hurricanes have finished top by a solitary point from the Blues. So if the Hurricanes make the grand final, they will host it. And that's on the night of Saturday, June 22. The Blues would have finished top if not for this in the 80th minute of their game against the Chiefs last night.
Ball left-hand side for Satiti, the big man, gets the arms free. Ball left-hand side, through 1, through 2, the Chiefs score! The Chiefs are over! What a magic moment! And it's Josh Ioane, 31-22, kick to come. 31-17, kick to come. And that's the 80 minutes, and the Blues can't believe it. They'll be dancing in Hurricanes territory.
Well, not exactly dancing. We had a wry smile to ourselves, Elliott Smith, when that happened. As I say, that try from the Chiefs denied the Blues a bonus point and handed the Hurricanes top spot. So Hurricanes, Blues 1 and 2. To kick around permutations and possibilities for the quarterfinals and to review the round robin segment of Super Rugby, we've brought together a couple of astute rugby analysts. Ant Strachan and Bryn are both with us. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us on Weekend Sport this afternoon. And can I start with you? How annoyed will the Blues be to let top spot slip in the final minute of their game, which you commentated with Elliott Smith last night?
Well, I think first and foremost, Piney, the win was the most critical thing. But yeah, you could just see on the final whistle after the last try was scored by the Chiefs, just how disappointed they were. They realised that they had a nice buffer, had created enough opportunities to obviously get that extra bonus point, and then by losing it, it was a bit of a dent for them. But I'm sure they'll come back this week.
Bryn, they say the table doesn't lie. Across 15 rounds, do the Hurricanes deserve to be on top for you?
Oh, I think so. I think the way that they played last night against the Highlanders, albeit obviously in difficult conditions, which I think is going to be massive, come at the back end of the year if there is a final there, and there are conditions like that, I think it's going to be important. But I think, look, the Blues and the Hurricanes, I think this year have been the two best teams. I think the Blues last night, the way they played, that wins anywhere. Look, I know they played really well in difficult conditions, especially being wet. But look, if they even do play the Hurricanes in Wellington, that forward pack at the moment is pretty impressive. Very ruthless and disciplined and clinical. So if they can bring that to the finals footy, they'll be a tough team to beat. Yeah,
I want to talk more about the Blues and the Hurricanes in a moment. But Ant, the Chiefs, how will the Chiefs be feeling about their season? 4th place, but 5 losses from their 14 games. Have they been a bit below where you thought they might be this year?
Yeah, I think so. And it's more been around their consistency, their ability to really put pressure on teams and obviously to win more games than they did. And I think for me, Piney, and probably saw it last night against the Blues, they've got some real set-piece issues. Their scrum and line-out seems to be a little bit all over the place. And, of course, in this competition, you know that those two facets of the game have to be on point. But, again, they can flick the switch. But, when you're sort of getting inconsistency around your set-piece and getting to gain line and putting pressure on, it makes it very difficult. So, they'll be disappointed, I think, with finishing 4th. I think they probably would have wanted to finish higher, obviously. But got some issues heading into this week.
What about you, Bryn, on the Chiefs? They, we go into knockout games now. They've got a terrific roster when everybody is fit. Can you see them winning 3 knockout games in a row to win Super Rugby, the Chiefs?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's enough experience within that team the last 3 to 4 years that have won finals and have actually been in finals and semi-finals as well. So I just think the thing that Ant touched on it nicely was around their set piece woes and their forward pack, I guess. I think, you look at the Blues and the Hurricanes, probably the most dominant forward pack are the Brumbies in Australia that I think are real dominant. They probably just got a little bit beaten up and around the contact area, and I think with Clayton and Roger and that coaching group, they'll know that if they do want to go deep into this competition, their set piece has to be better, and I think more so the collision area, because when they do get it right, I think arguably they probably do have one of the best space plays attack when Damien McKenzie's running on top of it. That pulls good go forward ball, and they get into the edges and asking questions around the centre wingers, but just haven't been able to do it in the last couple of weeks with, I guess, losing the contact area. And I guess if you look at the Blues on the weekend, they just suffocated them and just beat them up. So they'll have to recover well and get ready for a big gauntlet. They're going to have to win away from home if they want to win a final and a semi-final away from home.
Indeed. Well, speaking of trying to win away from home, the Highlanders are going to have to do that if they're to make the semi-finals. They travel to Canberra and to take on the Brumbies. I was really disappointed with patches of the Highlanders game last night. I know you probably didn't have close eyes on it getting ready for the Blues Chiefs game, but Justin Marshall said afterwards, look, they put the cue in the rack pretty early on in the second half. Do you think the Highlanders have what it takes to go to Canberra and beat the Brumbies?
Well, I mean, if you cast your mind back with this Highlanders group, they were right down the bottom of the competition. They built some nice momentum to get in to this top 8. But yeah, the game yesterday, they won't be pleased with that performance. But you just don't quite know what they're preparing for, obviously, for this week. The challenge they're going to have, Piney, is the Brumbies haven't lost any of their 8 home games. And we know how good they play in Australia. So the Highlanders are going to have to bring their A game plus to get over top of them. So it's going to be a really tough match for them.
Yeah, I think obviously Brumbies will be favourites based on their home form. Bryn, if the Brumbies go through to the semi-finals, how big a threat are they? Could the Brumbies make the final? Could the Brumbies win Super Rugby?
I definitely think they can. I think, look, they would have obviously wanted to finish first because I think they haven't lost at home, and I think them at home and them travelling, they're a little bit different, and I think they do struggle against New Zealand teams when they do play them over here for whatever reason. They don't travel as well as they are in Australia, but look, I think their forward pack has always been strong when it comes to their line-out more, their set piece, if they can get that right. And I think even they played, I can't remember earlier in the year, maybe they beat the Hurricanes in Canberra. If they can bring that kind of physicality and I guess that level of play against the New Zealand team in a semi, which we think that is going to happen, they do have the chance to do it. But whether they can do that away from home, I'm not too sure. And I think the New Zealand teams, or the Hurricanes or the Blues, if they do have to play them, I think it'll be a step too far for them.
And can you see any of the Fijian Drua, Melbourne Rebels or Reds causing an upset in the quarters? Any of those 3 appeal as a likely semi-finalist?
Yeah, I mean, probably just the Reds for mine. I mean, the Reds beat the Chiefs in Brisbane, don't forget, some months ago. And they have fashioned a pretty good style of football this year under Les Kiss. The Drua have had 9 away losses. They haven't won away from home. I mean, they've been so good in Lautoka, so you assume that coming to Auckland is going to be very, very tough for them. We just spoke about the Highlanders, and obviously the Rebels just squeaked into the 8. So for mine, it's probably just the Reds. I'm sure the Chiefs will get their game sorted for this week, and they'll address some of those critical areas we've spoken about. But yeah, the Reds are probably the dark horse for mine of maybe an upset in the first round.
Bryn, just before we move on to the top 2, did you see the Crusaders season coming? Did you see this coming?
Oh, no, I think I'm not the only person. I think most New Zealand probably thought that it wouldn't have happened. I think, look, traditionally in the last couple of years with the Crusaders, with the All Blacks coming in a little bit later, they tend to leave their run a little bit late. You look at the Chiefs and the Blues, respectively, the last 2 championships they won, they weren't playing that well at the start of the year, even in the middle patches of the year, losing to the Waratahs when I was there, and kind of losing those games that you don't expect the Crusaders to do, but they've kind of found their rhythm at the back end of the year. But the problem with the Crusaders this year is they just weren't able to pick up wins. Look, to not make top 8, I think, for the club they'll be bitterly disappointed. I know, with the changes and whatnot, I think being in the top 4, top 5, that kind of area would have been a pretty good season in terms to get into the final or semi-final to have a chance to do that. But I think with finishing outside the top 8, especially with the competition only having 12 teams. They'll be really disappointed. But I think for moving for 2025, the young players that did play, your George Bells, your Jamie Hannas, your Shea Fihakis, and even the guys that haven't played a lot of rugby, Noah Hotham, who had a great end to the year, those guys have been able to earn some valuable game time and some experience in playing derby games, travelling. And, I guess as Crusaders fans, they would have liked to seek into the top 8 because I think the way they were playing with their last 2 games, if you were the Blues or the Hurricanes, you probably wouldn't have wanted to be playing them. But Fijian Drua did a job. But I think, the review will be pretty hard in around what they did wrong and what they can do better. But I think for 2025, the players there, if they don't have the injuries that I think they had for the majority of the year, Scott Barrett, David Harville, the list goes on, at least for Blackadder, they just weren't able to gain momentum with all those guys being out at the moment.
Do you think, Bryn, that they'll stick with the same coaching group?
I think so. They don't panic down there, and I think with a review system and doing the whole year around a new coach, with Rob being there and Matt Todd being there, I think collectively they'll review well around what they did well and some things that they need to work on, and the leaders and the management and whatnot will collectively come together, and I think they won't panic. I think Rob will be there for another year, and I think with the way that they finished, it can be something that can springboard them, and hopefully, like I said, with no injuries, they can be better for that 2025 season.
All right, let's go to the Hurricanes and the Blues. Ant, who feels better equipped to you to win 3 knockout games and become Super Rugby champion?
It's a bloody good question, Piney, I tell you. But I suppose if you reflect on the Blues quickly, their strengths have carried them throughout the whole competition. They've been extremely consistent. They're really dominant at scrum and line out. Their attack is simple but really effective. It's direct, as we often say, and their defence has been impressive. Those particular criteria is what you need to get through to a final stage. The critical thing for me is what's the starting lineup look like? There's been a few moving parts in the last few weeks, so just in terms around the profile of the group to head into these last few games is going to be absolutely critical. And of course, you flip it around to the Hurricanes. Their attack has probably been one of the best in the comp. You'd have to say more extravagant than what the Blues are putting out. But also, as Bryn mentioned before, they're matching up really well in the collisions and set piece. So it's a gladiatorial game, isn't it? If those two teams hit the final again, and they both had a win each, so they're pretty evenly matched, to be honest.
All right, Bryn, what about you? As we sit here right now, who are Super Rugby favourites for you?
Oh, I think anybody having a final at home is pretty important. But even with that, I think the Blues, if they play the way they have, and that forward pack, I think has been the staple in and around that team, around how they've been able to win games, and it's very Crusader-esque around your set piece parity, winning your scrum, which we saw on the weekend. Their line out more and being able to attack off that. If they can get that right, and then defensively as well, they operated that kind of 89, 90, 91% with Craig McGrath and what they're doing there. They're going to be a tough team to beat. But with it being, if there is a final in Wellington, as Ant would know, winning away from home in big moments like that, it is tough. But I think with what I've seen with the Blues, and if they can bring that for the majority of the competition for the finals, I think they'll be the team to beat. All
right, intriguing 3 weeks ahead. Just before you both go, it'd be remiss of me not to tap into your halfback expertise. Scott Robertson's going to name his first All Black side of the year the Monday after the Super Rugby final. Ant, let's start with you. Who's the starting halfback in the first test of the year, and who backs him up?
Gee, that's a really interesting question too, because with Roigard out of the mix, you can throw the blanket over about 3 or 4 of them. Cortez Ratima has been impressive, hasn't he, all season for the Chiefs. Christie came on last night, had to start the game ahead of Funaki, and we know what he delivers week in, week out. So he certainly must be in the mix there somewhere. So those two, for mine, probably sit at the top of the tree. TJ Perenara, obviously, the experience sits in behind, but not sure it's quite right for him just yet. And then, of course, you got the likes of Roiger, young Noah Hotham from the Crusaders, who I know Bryn rates this kid pretty highly, but he's young, again, as is Ratima. So they've got a pretty young group. They'd probably be the 3 form halfbacks for mine.
What about you, Bryn? Are you bringing Noah Hotham in now?
It's tough. I think the way that he did play, and especially his kicking game in that last game, is probably one area that international rugby you definitely needed. So whether he's had enough time under the saddle, especially in pressure situations, whether it's going to be enough, I'm not too sure. I think he's definitely one for the future, and probably 6 to 12 months or even 18 months, he'll be that much closer. But I think he's probably just a little bit too raw into the sense that he hasn't had that much experience. So I'm actually going to go TJ Perenara with the fact of Cam Roigard being out, with Finlay Christie being in there, and then you, like Anne said, there's a blanket you can chuck over these 3 young guys coming through. You've got Cortez Ratima, who I think has been very, very consistent. It runs some great support lines and has been at the start of predominantly of the year of the Chiefs. So I'd go Cortez Ratima or Falau Fakatava, who I know has been in tough situations down south with the Highlanders, and it is a bit inconsistent with the team that they do have, but I would choose out of Cortez Ratima or Falau Fakatava. I can't choose right now, but the first 2 that I'd have would be TJ Perenara, Finlay Christie, and then I'd be choosing between Falau Fakatava and Cortez Ratima for that last spot.
Terrific insight from you both on Super Rugby, Knockout Footy and the All Blacks as well. Thanks so much for taking the time. Looking forward to the next month of Knockout Rugby.
Cheers. Cheers, mate. Take care.
No, thank you, guys. That's Strachan and Bryn Hall joining us. Your chance to react now to what you heard there or anything you saw over the weekend. 0800 80 10 80. Anything you want to pick up on. By virtue of finishing top, it doesn't matter who it is, but by virtue of finishing top, you must be slight favourites because you have that home advantage now all the way through to the grand final if you're good enough to make it. So the Hurricanes, by that metric, must be slight favourites, although to me the Blues are basically neck and neck with the Hurricanes, and the Blues have been very, very good. Top point scorers in the comp, they've conceded fewer than anybody else, so best attacking side, best defensive side by those measures. It could really come down to home advantage. If they meet in the final in Wellington, it'll be probably one of those where it's so hard to separate them. It's a coin flip, but you might just give it to the Hurricanes on home advantage. But the Blues, look, I haven't had a look at the odds, but I would imagine as we sit here right now, the Blues and the Hurricanes are joint favourites to win Super Rugby. That'd be my guess. How are you feeling, Crusaders? Not Crusaders. That's a bit of a habit. How are you feeling, Hurricanes and Blues fans, about this? Do you feel like your team is favourite? Chiefs and Highlanders fans, how are your optimism levels? 0800 80 10 80 for that. And if there's an upset coming in the quarterfinals, then who provides it? Can the Reds beat the Chiefs? Can the Rebels beat the Hurricanes? Can the Fijian Drua beat the Blues? Can the Highlanders go to Canberra and beat the Brumbies? Or are we on course for Hurricanes v Chiefs and Blues v Brumbies in the semis, as per rankings? 0800 80 10 80. Mike asks, Piney, does the winner of the Hurricanes-Rebels game then play the winner of the Chiefs-Reds? Mike, that it would be the case provided the top four all win their quarterfinals. So the top-ranked quarterfinal winner plays the lowest-ranked quarterfinal winner. So in the case of the top four all winning, yes. But if one of the bottom four, the teams 5 through 8, managed to win through, and the Hurricanes also won through, then they would play whoever is the bottom-ranked. So you look at the table right now, and then after the quarterfinals, you cross off the 4 teams who are out, and the top-ranked plays the bottom-ranked, and the second-ranked plays the third-ranked in the semi-finals. That's how it all plays out. Just on the Crusaders, they've missed out, as we know. The Rebels have finished 8th, but if you ask any Hurricanes fan or player who they would rather be playing in the quarterfinals, the Rebels or the Crusaders, you absolutely know who they would be choosing. They would say, give us the Rebels every day of the week. Yes, the Crusaders have only won 4 of their 14 games, but you take the Rebels over the Crusaders any day, don't you? Any day of the week.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.